Hello, everybody. Welcome to True Crime Tuesday. I was a bit too enthusiastic about that title read. My name is Adam, and I review things, and I'm going to review a book called The Townhouse Massacre: The Unforgettable Crimes of Richard Speck, and that was written by Ryan Green. I have reviewed two of his books so far, and it's from a collection called 12 from Hell. So it's basically like serial killers or serial murderers and um, how they functioned. And what I like about each book is that Green really gets into the heads of, well, each book is written in a different style. And the the last one, which was about this lady who was killing people in a boarding house and stealing their money, that was kind of like more neutral, third person. But this one is uh, all Richard Speck's thought process. And you you might not remember who Richard Speck is. The name was familiar, but I didn't really recognize that name at all as well. But he, so I didn't remember what he did, but basically he broke into a dorm where some student nurses were staying and he brutalized them. He killed eight people, and one person was hiding under the bed. So that's eventually how they caught him, is that she was able to identify the guy as this. And yeah, so Green writes about the Speck's story and how he developed this huge hatred for women, probably kind of connected to having this brain injury early in his life because um, he had a stepfather, and statistically, unfortunately, the thing that causes the most increase of sexual and violent activities in a family to children is if they have a stepfather. So this is one of those cases where his stepfather was an alcoholic and abusive, and they got into some kind of argument, and the stepfather hit him with something and broke his brain. And the scene is really well written because stepfather's just looking at, oh, he's gonna die, I have never killed anybody, I don't know what to do, and then he gets up and everything is okay, you think, but it's actually not okay. So he goes on and has a bunch of failures throughout the rest of his life, professionally, in education, romantically, and yeah, so he blames women, and it's a bit disturbing how the tone of voice that Green uses for Speck, it's really derogatory towards women, so it's a bit uncomfortable to listen to or read. And if you're listening to the audiobook, I would suggest maybe not doing that in public or not doing that, or, put some headphones on for this because I don't think that you want people to hear everything that comes out of that guy's mouth as the character of Richard Speck. So, one thing that I was a bit shocked by, or maybe it wasn't exactly clearly um, expressed in the book, is that when things happen, all of the characters are much younger than I thought that they were. I mean, the real people, but so Speck gets married, like he's married first, and Green does mention that he left school and he got married shortly after, but he was like 15 or 16 when he got married first, right? And then he goes to prison. And so he does he does all of this thing like talking about Speck as if he's a man. And 16, 17-year-olds can be dangerous. I'm not saying that, but they're not men in any sense of the word. So then there's a bit where he is dating a woman who used to be a wrestler, and like the way that she's described is like, oh, she's 48 years old. And yeah, she was older than he was, but when they met, she was 29. So there's a difference between being 48 and 29. So that was a bit surprising. Um, and this is actually why I knew Richard Speck, because I think in the mid 90s there was a he died earlier, but there was a video that was produced in the prison, which was this big scandal because they were doing drugs, um, they were engaging in sexual activities, um, and Richard basically was taking some hormones to develop breasts so that he would be able to play that role better in prison. And kind of crazy, like he said something like if they could see how much fun I'm having now, they would let me out. And he said something like, how do you so somebody asked him, how do you feel? And he's like, no, I feel how I felt when I was outside of prison. It doesn't really change. I don't feel like any guilt about killing all those women. And then somebody asks him, like, why did you kill them? And he's like, it just wasn't their day. So I think that in another review I did of the boarding house murders, I talked about how it doesn't necessarily make sense to study the motivations of killers because you're not actually going to find, you're not going to protect the people that they kill. And I do think that that is true, but I think uh, I'd say something a little bit different in this particular case is I think that the injury really did negatively affect him and everybody he met in his entire life. And those women were really well protected by the standards of an educational institute. They were like in their night, they were 18, 19 young women, 19-year-olds. So um, apart from having a guard everywhere, like what can you do? And I think that that's actually an interesting um, case for like overprotection versus personal liberty. Like you can keep everybody in prison like circumstances to keep them safe, but it's actually not a viable solution to protect people from people with damaged brains. And it's much better to probably invest the time in kind of identifying those people who have violent tendencies because they have brain injuries and saying, okay, you have violent tendencies here. Maybe we should restrict your access to society. I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting point. So, yeah, Richard Speck, um, he's responsible for his actions, but it kind of reminds me of Chris Benoit. I don't know if you know who Chris Benoit is, but Chris Benoit is this wrestler who was wrestling for many, many years, and he murdered his family uh, because he became more and more violent. He murdered his family, and when they examined his brain, they found holes in his brain because of all of his concussions. So that happened to Richard Speck too. And I don't think that it is the explanation for all crimes, all violent crimes, but it certainly is an explanation for some violent crimes. So it would be good if there was some way of identifying those people before they harmed other people. So yeah, if you're interested in true crime, if you're interested in reading about Richard Speck's life, I'd recommend the book. But yeah, as I said, maybe uh, don't listen to it out loud. Put some headphones on. What did you think? Have you read the book? If you've read the book or you have any thoughts about Richard Speck, put them in the comment section below, which is where your comments should go. All right. Thank you. Bye bye.